On March 20th, 2025, I arrived in Big Bend National Park and set up my campsite in the basin during spring break week when it's oftentimes difficult to find a site. I had checked a couple of days before and there was a site available, so I went for it and decided to have an introvert's version of a spring break in Big Bend National Park. All right, so it's 6:40 in the morning on March 21st. It's Friday, and I'm at Panther Junction. I started out in the basin this morning. The bathrooms throughout the basin are closed in terms of running water, and to get my hair as beautiful as it is right now, I had to have just a little bit of running water, mostly to temper the hair from looking like I just woke up, which I just did. And now I'm going to continue on to my next undetermined destination, but not before I drink my entire giant glass of water, giant cup of water. And once I drink my cup of water, I'm going to refill it at the spigot that's here, which has beautiful fresh water that's coming directly from the Big Bend itself. And after I drink this giant amount of water, refill my cup, then I'm going to head off to our next destination. Stay tuned. Sometimes I like to come out here in this area and say prayers. Sometimes when I do that, things around me happen. Boulders start moving. There's a resonance. We can all resonate in different ways. And many of us, the purpose of what we do is for validation. If you've followed this channel, or even me, for any amount of time, you'll probably notice that I also was seeking validation. And then at a certain point, it got to where I didn't need anyone's validation, not my family, not my friends. I only needed to continue doing what it was that I've been set out to do. What I've been set out to do is to communicate a message. And that message is of the declining health of our ecosystems. We can see it around us if we really pay attention. But many of us will fail to pay attention even to this type of content. And even in the face of seeing something, there'll be many doubters. There are books of faith that talk about this in the same way. For that reason, just like I would lead my family in prayer, I want to lead you, also my family, in a prayer today. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. Dear Heavenly Father, please allow us to forgo our daily bread and to share it humbly with those in need. Help us to take care of our ecosystems. Help us to take care of one another. Help us to take care of each other by first taking care of ourselves. And help us to overcome the challenges, the stumbling blocks that have been set out before us. Help us to resolve our differences. Help us to show each other love again. Help us to nourish everything around us in love. I humbly ask this, dear Lord, and I put forth my action into these efforts. Amen. I hope that you are also of the mindset that peace is more effective than violence. I heard a song recently by this guy, Jesse Wells, War Isn't Murder. It's a pretty challenging song. He's got another song called Whales. I asked one time some relatives of mine what they thought of the song. They just said it was a good song. They actually were on the way to go watch some whales on a whale watching excursion. As much as I love nature, you would think that these relatives would share some of this content, this insight with someone like me. But for some reason, I got instead the silent treatment for trying to discuss the song beyond, oh, it's a nice song. If you really listen to the lyrics of some of the things that all of us are saying, it seems like there's a generational divide where the elders are sitting in their comfortable reclining chairs without having any kind of insight or contributions to return back the level of comfort that we're experiencing to our friends in need. It was really cold out there, especially when the wind started coming in. You can see the dust on the horizon. I just showed it to you. And overall, that's basically what's been going on for some time in several areas of this nation, possibly the entire globe, where there's this haze. And it changes the way that light filters down through to our plants. And that changes how and when things fruit, if at all, and flower. Not long ago, I was here and I got to see some bluebonnets. And normally there needs to be a decent amount of rainfall for those things to occur on a regular basis. And the local headlines from my state were that we're going to have a lower than normal turnout for things like wildflowers. And the reason for that is, of course, like I was saying, we have different things going on. You can see the horizon in the back. You can see it's a little bit hazy. The sky is blue, but it's got this tint of brown to it, and it's not, I like to wave to the cars going by, and it's not normal for it to be continuously overcast like this. I know there are seasons. I know that most of the people who have ghosted me about this topic will tell me, well, you're not going to during the right season to see certain things. You're not there during the right temperatures to see certain things. And even the park biologists, I believe that most of the people who are working in these areas now, in these professions, are a little bit more of a newer generation that doesn't really know what it was like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And for me, I'm lucky that I've been visiting this place since 1993. So to put it into perspective, that's the first time that I saw a bear in the wild. And it was amazing to me. It was amazing to the point where I was hooked. There was a show that we used to have called Wild America. And Wild America, there was this guy, Marty Stauffer, who would do crazy things. He would encounter many interesting scenarios, whether they were orchestrated or not. The fact is, those animals used to be ever present. And especially in the areas that you would go to that would have these biological indicators. In this particular place, the things that were ever present, like tarantulas, reptiles sunning when the sun comes out, and a variety of insects and the flowers, all of the different flowers and fauna have been reduced to the point where there are very clear changes to our ecosystems. It used to be you could drive up into the basin of this park, Big Bend National Park, and there would be javelina playing up there in the basin, frolicking, huckbuckling. And they would do that because there were so many of them that you had a healthy ecosystem and things weren't really on edge all the time. Here, in today's world, as nature becomes more and more on edge, as it's clamoring for survival, I believe that our people are also experiencing some of that anxiety. And some of that anxiety is something that we can hardly do anything about to alleviate it, unless we're just confident that, death is not the end. And I say that with respect for those who both believe and don't believe in any kind of afterlife. But as we see, after life, most of everything that's in nature continues to sustain that which is still alive. In humanity, we've decided to do things like pump a bunch of chemicals into a body, bury it in some version of an expensive casket, and then now put a capstone on top of that expensive waste that used to be a beautiful body, and we let the earth supposedly deal with it in a covered up state. So all of these cover-ups are marginal attempts at pacifying us with regard to what is waiting for us in the afterlife. For me, I don't care if it's mahogany or cherry or oak or whatever kind of wood. I don't care if there's a capstone. I actually would prefer to have a sky funeral where in a place like this, where there's not an overwhelming amount of food for some of these animals, I could simply be returned to the sender. you know? And I think a lot of us probably could begin to evaluate all of the different opportunities we have in terms of what can we do both while we're alive and after we've become unanimated. What can we do to help restore these circumstances? There are a lot of things we can do. There are a lot of things that are hard to talk about because of policies and legislature, and all of those legalities are things that are discussed in books of peace in terms of stumbling blocks. The stumbling blocks are so powerful that they cause people like my own parents to overlook whatever it is that I talk about. In my family, some of my family likes to go and spray pesticides and herbicides on grave sites for my ancestors. Out here in the wild, the last thing I would expect to find would be what I just showed you earlier, a hanger and a tube of sunscreen on the graves of my ancestors. That's the last thing I would want to have. And at the same time, because most of us are very careless, irresponsible people, as a general population, the only margin of responsibility that we can express to our family that they recognize is usually in terms of dollars and cents. How much money does so-and-so make? That's how much we have to respect them. And all of those things are trivial at best in terms of what kind of money we make. The real impact is, how do we make one another feel? For a lot of people in my circles, I think that I get a great deal of joy from hanging out with the people who like to spend time with me. And even the people who wouldn't like to spend time with me, we find common ground and we find an appreciation with one another. So out here, as there's been a great decline in certain things like insects and vegetation and wildlife in general, my appreciation is magnified. So when I see one single ant over a 9+ mile hike in the desert, that's impressive because I know life is still sending out those soldiers to try and find, how are we going to sustain the colony? So in terms of humanity, we're probably going to be facing some similar circumstances where we're going to have some people that are going to have to be sent out to explore and find what it is that we can use to sustain ourselves. The first thing I would recommend is that nature is where it all comes from. And so we want to start reinvesting in nature right away. Back at home in San Antonio, I have an established tomato vine growing, several tomato vines growing, but one was already fruiting. And the tomatoes, I got to take the first ones from the season and enjoy them. And right after that, right before or right during when the next ones were ripening, all of a sudden, some animal came and got the rest of them. Now, that's what that's for. That's what the food is for. The animals that got the tomatoes and ate them are going to go and poop out tomatoes, tomato excrement, and it's going to have seeds that'll be passed on for the next generations. Seeds of fruiting plants, not seeds of formaldehyde. So what our ancestors want to do and what they would ghost us over is irrelevant. We need to have these conversations come to the forefront so that we can understand all together at the same time that what we're doing as humanity is so destructive that haze on the horizon is continuous now. That these vegetation that used to fruit and flower are having difficulties, that the animals that depended on all of these fruits of the Creator's labor are being destroyed by bills and policies. So whatever anyone else wants to think, this is an introvert's thoughts while I'm in Big Bend National Park. I want to switch gears here and tell you that normally I'd recommend that you have 4 days in this park. There's a north side of the park, there's a south side of the park, there's a west side of the park, there's an east side of the park. At minimum, you want to spend 4 days here. There's also the central aspect of the park, the Chisos Basin. At minimum, you want to spend 4 days here. For a corporate worker, what that means is normally you could get, let's say for an example, if you're off on the weekend, take a Thursday and a Friday off, or a Monday and a Tuesday. Now you have 4 days off. And with those 4 days, the way that I would make this happen, very much like I made it happen for this trip, as soon as I'm off, it helps if you have an early schedule. In other words, like 6 to 2:30. As soon as I'm off from work, I would immediately leave and head off to this destination, because it takes some time to drive here, about 7 or 8 hours, depending on where you're going to stay, etc. And so I would arrive at nightfall and then have the next 2 days off, and then the next 2 days off, whether it was work and then weekend, or weekend and then work. But with all of those 4 days, on the first day, I'll pick one side of the park. On the second day, I'll pick another side of the park. On the third day, I'll pick another side of the park. And if I'm staying central, in a central location, I'm already exploring the other area of the park. So at minimum, to sample all of what this park has to offer, I would have a 4-day break. And during that 4-day break, I would be prepared to be here as soon as possible, and prepared to leave late and get back super late, maybe even barely getting back in time to start work the next day. And so it might be better if you took 3 days off, if you have a traditional 2-day off weekend to work with. And all of this is something that I suggest, and yet for some of the people who I've notified about these things, people will come in and try to do it as a 1-day excursion. Maybe they'll climb Emery Peak, just as an example, and they'll never really experience any of the other wonders that this place has to offer. This place has an unbelievable amount of wonders to offer. It's just a matter of whether we have the time to pay attention to it or not. So while you're paying attention, I'm exploring the south side of the park. We're going to be exploring some introvert related areas of the park first on the way. I've already got a line of cars behind me. I'm going 44 miles an hour, and there are at least 3 cars behind me that want to go a lot faster. Pretty soon we're going to be entering a different speed zone area where the speed limit is 30. And for whatever reason, people want to blast through here. This morning I already saw one roadkill pocket gopher, or some kind of a rodent anyway, and it wasn't a ground squirrel, it was a nighttime type thing. And I saw 3 cottontails on the Burrow Spring pour-off road, and other than that, I saw 1 moth. So generally in the morning when I leave before sunrise, normally, I did hear an owl while I was at the Burrow Spring pour-off. Generally, in places like these, you can hear coyotes awakening at dawn, singing. They've been awake all night. The coyotes that survived anyway. And all of these different animals will continue to make their presence known, like the owl that I got to hear. But some of the things that are absent are the critters that come out, whether it's cold or hot. The tarantulas, the wind scorpions, actual scorpions. I had to really work to find those baby scorpions that you saw in the first segment of this series. And that was basically because I had a specialized flashlight to do that with. Without some of these things, a lot of these creatures would be unnoticed, would go unnoticed. They're hidden. And without staying still and paying attention, some of these animals would be completely elusive, and you'd never see them. I'm passing by an area where one of my friends saw a mountain lion on the ridge here. I was with 2 friends. We drove in during a time frame where there were so many nighthawks that you almost couldn't avoid striking them. They were all over the road. But it was because there were a lot of insects. It wasn't like you see behind me in this Mad Max scenario where you have these blustery windstorms that are causing low visibility, flipping over 18-wheelers, things like that. So I see someone walking in a jacket and jeans. It's still quite cold. It was really cold out there while I was walking around. I'm gonna make a quick stop here to make sure I have all my gear ready, and then I'm gonna take you on an excursion. So I'll try not to talk so much without interesting scenery around me, but hopefully you got to see the scenery going by in the rear window, and hopefully you're still hanging on for this ride, understanding that this message was just for you. We're headed off into a general direction where I'm in a bleak desert and it's dusty and I want to sneeze and my nose is running, and I'm pleasantly entertained by what I've got to navigate. Look. So as you can see, I'm trying to watch where I'm stepping because there are things that could go through my feet, go through my shoes, and also I'm looking for stuff like this. I don't know if they were actually there or if you could tell what I was looking at or trying to look at. I was trying to look for animal tracks. Here's something. So I'm looking for all kinds of things. And every once in a while I think I found something large like a skull or something weird like interlocked antlers, and the wind isn't blowing at that moment, and I'll walk miles to go and see what I'm looking at, what didn't make sense through the binoculars, and then I'll find out it's just blowing toilet paper. First spider web I've seen all day. Please take a moment with me on this scarily steep slope as I bless this Ocotillo with some much deserved water. Beautiful Ocotillo, I share this water with you humbly as an offering of goodwill and a gesture of appreciation and acknowledgement. And I ask that you continue to bless these animals that come by here with your pleasing nectar, pollen, with your life, the vitality that you bring to this desert, courtesy of the Creator above, who provides all necessary elements to allow for this beautiful moment. I would only see one hummingbird during this outing. I don't necessarily call it a trip. It definitely wasn't a vacation. Even though I remained focused on attempting to find the beauty that I could share with you. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Here you saw predator and prey scat. Neither looked all that fresh. What does this look like to you? It's the second spider web I've seen today. Just like the other one, it looks to be unattended. I think I found the route to what appears to be a massive shelter behind me. I don't think I'm going to check it out today though. I'm starting to make my way back just to explore the rest of this area. So now I've been sitting here for what feels like a couple of hours since I got back from my extended walk in the desert. I've just been recovering. The temperatures are so nice that I can leave the windows down on the non-roadside side and I can leave them vented on the side that faces the road. And there's this cross breeze that's coming through here. I actually had a grasshopper in this car just about an hour or so ago, and I can hear a fly possibly attracted to the vibrations of the talking that's going on. Whatever the case, since there aren't very many bugs, since the temperature is cooler than average, cooler than normal right now, I'm able to take advantage of this few moments of isolation. Even though there are cars going by, there's a cool cross breeze that's much lower than the ambient temperature, and it's been amazing. If you're an introvert like me and you want to spend time away from people, away from all of the biases and all of the chatter that's going on, and you don't want to turn your phone's signal on because you really don't care to be immersed in any of this stuff, this is the place where you'll want to visit. I know a lot of people who want to be plugged in, so plugged in that they're constantly aware from the moment they wake up. They want to have the news on and they have to get their drink on. And then basically, it's like every bit of news that they can possibly have, including the notifications on the phones, have to be going, or else they feel like they're not at ease. The interesting thing is that all of those things do cause disease. And if you can't disconnect from it, it's just as much an addiction as any other addiction, like prescription pills, over-the-counter medication, bottled or canned alcohol, or whatever. All substance abuse, all food abuse. Abuse is abuse. Love is love, and everyone knows the difference. It's just hard to slow the mind down and think about the things that really matter. So if If you think stuff like this really matters, I encourage you, if you haven't already, to click on the thumbs up, click on subscribe, click on the description to try and see if there's a way that you can help this journey to prevail. And either way, I hope you're having a great day and that you stay tuned to see what else we see for the rest of today. My original plan was to get us down to Santa Elena Canyon, and I think I'll still end up doing that because I'm most of the way down here towards Santa Elena Canyon. I just want to try to do this when the temperature is a little bit more pleasant. It's about 5 o'clock. Sunset is about 8 o'clock. I'm not really sweating it here, so I might stay still for a little while and enjoy rehydrating, and then I might make it to Santa Elena Canyon. And the beauty of it is, no matter what I end up doing, my campsite is set up in the basin for tonight, so we're going to have another cool night of sleep, and I'm looking forward to that. So right now I'm stopped literally in the shade of the Santa Elena Canyon. Check it out. I don't know if you can tell, but the sun is on the road in front of us, and we're perfectly shaded right now. So I'm going to roll the windows down and take another quick break. Taking us on a super secret hike where we could hopefully see some of the elusive bluebonnets from 2025. I saw some a couple of weeks ago in a different location, but this is my all-time highest percentage chance of seeing bluebonnets locations in this national park. Unbelievably tall bluebonnets. I don't want to disturb them. And also, last bit of water. It's real tough to get to. Water is life, and there's so many things that you can find when you're just taking a leisurely walk out here. So many things that might be noteworthy, interesting, and at the same time, you look at this, here's a web. Let's see if I can find it again. There it is. Here's a web. I don't know if you could see the ant. I tried to get in that clip, but life is one of the things that you should see in a healthy ecosystem. Life at all extremes. And the fact is, there are certain things that can't prevail if there's not enough water and if there are not enough food sources. So these now trending cyclical climate challenges that are no longer cyclical, they're just continuous, are definitely causing some things a lot of stress. But you saw those bluebonnets. Those were easily past my waist. Those are some of the tallest bluebonnets I've ever seen. And I've been noticing that in the things that I see that are surviving. Some of the strongest examples are surviving. That doesn't mean that the entire species will survive over time. I mean, think about the mammoths. Think about all the different wildlife that has come and gone on this planet. And then think about us, where we rank up there when nature suddenly doesn't provide us with any kind of food or water anymore. What then? Tuff Canyon is another magical place to visit in the Big Bend National Park, where there are sources of water. Sometimes, like for an example, there's some standing water in a pool way back in the corner back here. If I had some binoculars with me or a spotting scope, I might be able to just pull up a chair and sit here for a long time, because it's so pleasant. There are no bugs, or very few, I should say, and that's made it exceptionally easy to visit a place like this just wearing shorts and a t-shirt and not having to worry about bug sprays or anything like that. And so right now what I'm doing is I'll be watching the water for a little while up until about the last of the visibility remains. Then I'll head back up the trail. I've got my flashlight and I will be taking my time on the way back looking for the nocturnal signs of life that come out throughout this type of a desert scape. So stay tuned. More chewing gum, different color. Some kind of wrapper. Another one-time use paper product. Also check this out. Pretty cool, huh? So here we are at Mule Ears Peaks, the overlook. And the first thing that we saw when we came into this parking lot was a plastic bottle of water. Again, these conveniences have greatly improved the possibilities in our lives, and they've also significantly produced more and more damage. The only thing I can see that would be good of this is if some animal or lost hiker found the bottle with the remaining water in it. However, I still would pray to find a better source of water than a half-drunk bottle that someone just carelessly let go of in this type of environment. Because of this, I've tried to talk with people like my elders about their habits and buying the pallets of plastic bottles of water. I also used to participate in this. It was a really bad habit. I still definitely use one-time use plastic bottles in the packaging that we are being sold. And I know that we could do something better if only we could first acknowledge that we need to stop doing these things. These addictions are killing us all.
Have you ever seen broken glass reflecting back at you on the roadway? If so, you'll know how to recognize one of the more common, formerly more common desert critters that are out there, the wolf spider. A number of years ago, I had the thought that there couldn't have been this many accidents in Big Bend National Park, that there was broken glass all over the entire roadway. So I slowed down to investigate a little bit more closely, and I was amazed by what I found.
So I know you can't see anything right now. You can't see anything by this side of the camera anyway, not with the other side either. But I literally can see my vehicle and the stripes on the road, and a minimal amount of detail by starlight alone. I've got my nifty Garmin watch light that I can use if I need to, and all I've got to say is there are so many stars. It's unbelievable how many stars you can see here just without any kind of assistance, because it's so clear out here. And there's an innumerable amount of satellites and shooting stars as well.